Listeners, viewers, thank you so much for signing back in. It's been a little bit. Our season 5 got axed by me, of course, because I apologize. We are now on season 6, episode 43, but the last half of last year, I went back to school. Of course I did. So I got my certificate in grant writing from Bunker Hill Community College. And so I focused on that from like August to December, and I'm done. So, but I mean, last time we spoke too, it was before the conference. I think it was like September, like I said, August or September. And you got to go to the conference, right? The
Yeah,
AHTA
yeah, the
last year.
conference was great. It was wonderful to reconnect with so many of our peers in horticultural therapy. And yeah, I thought the conference was wonderful. And next year's conference is going to be done virtually. So they're
Yeah.
doing it every other year. The AHTA is having these conferences in person and online, alternating
I
them.
mean, let's get right into it for our
Yeah.
viewers and listeners. Again, this is the aha moment. I appreciate you all coming back. Listen, another endeavor that I've been doing is taking on HT interns, and I have my HT intern right here, Rachel Boyer. So I don't want to get too much into the bio part. I'll upload it to the Podbean. You can read through it.
So normally we love to uh, hear about the beginning stages of your journey. What is your original connection with plants? Did
Mm,
you have that
yeah,
growing up as a child? Did it come
yeah,
later in your life, etc.?
yeah. So my dad was a community college biology professor for 45 years, and he was yeah, he actually met my mom when over in Malaysia. She's Chinese from Malaysia, and in the Peace Corps when he was over there teaching science, and she was teaching English. And anyway, that's where my origin is. But
Mm-hmm.
so he was a biology teacher and just extremely interested in, this, he was like, had a childlike curiosity for his whole life. I think,
Mm-hmm.
he passed away about 5 years ago now, but just so interested in everything, outdoors. And so yeah, we were always outside. We were,
Mm-hmm.
we'd have dead frozen birds in the freezer that he'd pull out, I took,
Your house was a laboratory,
yeah,
so to speak.
exactly. So he would do Ikebana flower arranging, like he just was very connected to all of that stuff. We would do trillium trysts where we would go and have a picnic out in the woods in the middle of all the blooming trilliums.
Oh
You
my
Take
know,
me, take me.
yeah. So we just kind of grew up with that stuff. So it was a lot. That's where my kind of initial interest, came.
What
Yeah.
state was that in that you did the
That was in
tree?
upstate New York. We call it, say, upstate Binghamton area. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I'm from.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Binghamton, all that area. Yep.
But as far as gardening itself as well, did your
Yeah, I
mom or
mean,
your
we
dad
had a
do any of that?
garden. We had a garden every year. My
Uh,
my parents ended up moving into this little farmhouse. We had, a goat, we had duck,
oh.
we had kittens and dogs, and like
Hmm.
we had a little farm, little field. Not a lot of vegetables, but yeah, we definitely grew veggies
Hmm.
every year. And
Dabbled
um
in the natural sciences, real time, real life.
yes,
Yes,
yes, yeah, yeah.
that's
So
wonderful.
yeah.
And is that something you feel like you've wanted to carry on in your adulthood?
Well, it's interesting. It's funny now that, he's passed, and sometimes I just like wish that I could, because I'm coming around to doing a lot of the things that he used to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I like kind of, you keep wishing, oh, I should have paid more attention when he was around, or I wish I could talk to him about this right now because I think he'd
Mm-hmm.
really love this thing that I just learned, or, would find this fascinating. Um, so there's a little bit of that. And so I inadvertently or whatever I feel like I am sort of carrying that forward a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's been
Yeah, I mean,
interesting.
it's never a straight shot. I mean,
Oh
we
no.
sometimes pick these things up that our parents taught us, but in a
Mhm.
much more fragmented state, where
Yeah.
we haven't considered it for years and years, and then all of a sudden we start
Yeah.
adapting or adopting those things that we didn't
Right.
realize beforehand.
Right.
So
Right.
that's really, and you're honoring him in that process.
Yeah. 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 And I think one thing I'm learning more about or pointing out to people is to put on those awe lenses, right? To have curiosity and look at the world with awe and the detail. So I feel like that's something that he always did through his whole life. So that's
Mhm.
something that I definitely am emphasizing with people, I think, these days.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
So we've had a couple other guests on the podcast who have a background in landscape architecture
Yeah.
and have approached horticultural therapy, um, graduating, as I like to say,
Yeah.
graduating to that point
Yeah. Yeah.
of revelation.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm curious, what was your draw to landscape architecture versus any other kind of,
Right. Yeah.
designing or of sorts?
Yeah.
Was it your connection to the nature that you remember as a child and you wanted to incorporate that?
Yeah. Here's the beginning of my journey. So I wanted to be a ballerina. I was, I was and I was on the professional track. I was getting, I was going to ballet 6 days a week through my whole high school, and I ended up graduating early from high school and because my parents didn't want me to go to New York City by myself when I was 16. So I ended up going to SUNY Purchase for a year to study dance, but that wasn't great. And then there was a professional little company that opened in my hometown of Binghamton. So I joined that. And that was great. It was amazing, to do that. But the money was dwindling away and the contracts were getting less and less. And so I started to think, oh, I need to do something else. And so I started to go into community college and start building classes. And I have this love of biology. And I also am art is something that's really, really important to me as well. So I had this nature biology interest and this art interest. And landscape architecture is just interesting because it's about, as a dancer, you're moving around with people and creating space
Oh,
with people, right? So
can
here
you
I was
repeat that
now,
again? Your audio cut out for a moment.
oh,
Can you?
sorry. When you're in dance, you're working with people, right? You're dancing and you're moving and you're creating formations and forms and, with people. And then in landscape architecture, actually creating spaces for people to move through, and you have to think about how they're moving through. So in a way, there is a connection.
Mhm.
So it was the art, the science, and sort of this idea of movement and people and creating
Mhm.
spaces for them. So
Mhm.
I loved landscape architecture. It was, wonderful. I got, bachelor's, I got married, then got my master's in landscape architecture, and I worked in the field for over 10 years.
Mhm.
I moved up here to Burlington, Vermont area because I got a job with a landscape architect up here.
And what was the landscape architecture projects that you got to work on at the time?
Yeah, so he did a lot of there's campus design, and what I primarily was working on a lot was high-end residential
Hmm.
and
Yep.
doing a lot of planting plans. And so
Hmm.
I know everything about plant material,
Hmm.
outside. I'm not so great with the indoor plants, but outside I just know
Hmm.
everything, perennials and yeah, and actually I remembered I actually did a summer interning at the Berkshire Botanical Garden, which
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah.
you might know of.
Yeah.
So that
Love
was
that
a fun,
place.
yeah, that was a really fun summer. But yeah, so that's how I got up here and was studying landscape architecture.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then
And so when you moved to Vermont and you worked for the landscape architect there,
mhm,
what was the switch over point? Where did you
yeah, yeah,
discover
yeah,
this gateway into
right,
horticultural
right.
therapy?
So this is where I'm going to share very sort of personal, hard stuff.
Hmm.
But so I had I got married, we moved up here, was working, and I had my two daughters who are now older. They're adults, 27 and 25, doing
You
great in New
have
York City.
27 and
Yeah,
25-year-old children? You don't even look that
I
age.
I know I'm gonna be 60 at the end of this year.
Your parents
yeah,
have given you really good genes.
yeah,
Relax.
yeah. So anyway, one daughter's in medical school, and then the other is, in her third year medical school, and the other works for Uniqlo, which is she's a graphic designer. And then my third child was born. His name was Ethan, and he was born with a very severe seizure disorder. So that changed the whole trajectory of my life. So I had to just think there was a lot of medical complications, 25 to 30 seizures a day. It just was, many sort of surgeries. He had other medical things. And so I ended up having to stop working as a landscape architect. I just couldn't because I needed to sort of case manage his life. And at the end of his life, we had about 80 hours of in-home nursing care, things like that. So unfortunately, he did pass away at the age of 2.5. So that was like 2.5 years of, pouring love into this lovely, human being. But he was never verbal or ever able to walk or really sit. But we were surrounded by a lot of amazing people, and we had a lot of like what we say early intervention services. So we had therapists coming into the home. And so my aha moment, I guess,
Mhm.
is when we were kind of homebound a little bit because he had a lot of medical equipment. We would spend a lot of time in a hospital setting, either Boston Children's or the UVM Medical Center or Mass General. So there was a lot of trips to Boston. Um, and I think for us at the time, UVM Medical didn't have any outdoor green spaces as they do now, but places like Boston did. They had a beautiful garden, which is now not there anymore, but but so I think we needed those places to be able to kind of have sort of an escape from what was happening at that moment in time. And then we weren't really able to leave our house very easily. There was a lot of equipment that he had and, oxygen and all those kinds of things. So, one thing we did notice is when we brought him outside and just laid him on a blanket on the ground, he would there was something that settled in him. And his seizures would be a little bit less. And he would just, he would kind of like extend his hands out like this up to the sky. And he would like look at the silhouette of his fingers against the sky. So there was I think he had cortical visual impairment. There was a lot anyway. So that was big. And I think, so we just became very immersed in the medical field. I think you end up getting this medical education that you never thought you needed,
Exactly.
and he was the kind of kid where, they'd say, on 1% of the time this will happen with this, and he would be that 1% of a time that would happen to. So but he didn't have a specific diagnosis. It was unknown etiology is what you call. So we were always hopeful. Like we never knew, there was never a timeline on his life. We just always hoped that things would get better. And that was really important. And that's something I think that has carried through to this idea of hope. And gardening is all about that, right?
It's
So
all
we
about
became
the
very,
tomorrow, living for the
yes,
tomorrow. Yeah.
exactly. So toward the end of his life, he was granted a Make-A-Wish. And we decided, because actually my husband also studied landscape architecture, we decided that we couldn't leave the house. So we wanted to create a sensory therapy garden for him in our backyard. So I think that is the point at time where I started to, digging into sensory and therapy and knowing about plants and all that horticultural therapy. I don't remember exactly like when that popped into my knowledge, but that was something that was there. And I realized that this is really interesting. And I think I ended up going after he passed away. He actually passed before we could do the Make-A-Wish garden, unfortunately, but we decided we would do it anyway because my two daughters were very excited about it. And we decided, all right, we're going to do something in our backyard. We'll try to open it up to the special needs population, which never quite happened because we got busy with parents and we adopted a child from Korea afterward and, all that. Yeah. So, but I did take a course. I think I went down to NYBG because my in-laws lived down there, and I took like an intro to horticultural therapy class, I think it was. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what I really want to do.
Mhm.
And then in 2007 and 8, I did the summer intensive program. So I split it over 2 summers because I was also working. So
Yes.
I
Yep.
did, the summer intensive program to get to complete the stuff for the certification
Mhm.
through NYBG. At that point, I had started working for an organization called Vermont Family Network that had been very helpful to our family.
Mhm.
That's where we had gotten all the early intervention services from.
Mhm.
So, long story, I'm still working there part-time 19 years later. And
Mhm.
I was the assistant director and then the director for over 8 years of the early intervention program, which was the largest program in the state of Vermont.
Oh,
We had
wow.
over 250 children working with supporting families who have children with disability or special health care need.
And this is, I mean, you're credited to getting involved in this position or being hired as this in this position because of your own personal experience and your
Yes,
drive, your motivation to learn more. Did
yeah.
you end up having
It's
to take classes as well in that?
no, so Vermont Family Network, over 50% of our staff are parents of children
I
with a
see.
special health needs. So I actually came to the role as a parent. I
Mm-hmm.
was like the program manager, then I was the assistant director, and then I started supervising people, and then I became
Yeah.
that one director left, and another director left, and then I became the director. And I never imagined myself ever in a leadership role, but there I
Yeah.
was suddenly with managing 24 staff and having a leadership team and trying to run an underfunded mandated program, which was really hard. But I found that I never really did direct service with kids or families, but I found that I was really good at systems level work. And I really felt like my place was to support those that were sort of doing the work on the ground. So yeah, so that's how I kind of came into that. And and as it turned out, like when I finished the NYBG program is when I actually was asked to be the director of the program.
Mm-hmm.
So I suddenly was like, oh, I
Yeah.
need to focus on this and I can't do this right now. So I feel like my road to landscape art or to horticultural therapy has taken me it's been 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. You've had a few pit stops along the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you
So
still saw the opportunity to pursue it, continue on
yeah.
with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
so
then,
you have your certificate in
yeah.
is it therapeutic horticulture or horticultural therapy?
It
So
was
a
therapist
horticultural
therapy.
therapy. I'm
Okay.
actually sort of on the grandfathered end of things.
Okay.
And I also thought, oh, I'm never going to be able to get my HCR. But then, we kind of I talked to Derek Stowell and Aaron, and I
Hmm.
think we figured out that with all of the stuff that I have, and I got
Hmm.
this integrative health and wellness coaching
Hmm.
certificate, and anyway, that we think we can put it together.
That
So
would
I'm
be
hoping
great.
for that. So now I'm just doing the internship with Aaron as my
Yeah.
supervisor.
And as
Of
far
which
as your position now as operating or pursuing horticultural therapy
Mhm.
as an applied practice, what is that capacity looking like right now? What are you doing right now with it?
Yeah, so during COVID, our organization, sort of the early intervention program moved to another organization. So I actually had to lay off 24 people, including myself, right at the beginning of COVID
Ugh.
and move all the kids over. But anyway,
Oh.
I'm now the training and outreach coordinator for Vermont Family Network, but I also started to talk with I don't know if you attended the AHTA conference when it was here in Burlington, Vermont, but
Oh,
there's a woman.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I
so
did. Yep.
Lisa Hoare was
Hmm.
the garden educator before me at the hospital. So you might have seen the
Yeah, I do
gardens and
remember
met her.
meeting her. Yep.
Yeah. So I started to connect with her during COVID, and we started this little group where we would meet and talk about horticultural therapy and kind of what we were dreaming and thinking about doing with another woman from a mental health agency. So the three of us, like, it was a couple of years where we would meet online and we would talk and then just kind of dream and think. And so, long story short, it was 2 years ago, Lisa said she was going to be leaving her position to pursue some other interests of hers, and was I interested? And so I was, yeah, obviously interested. So I ended up getting the role. So it's a part-time role. So I'm working part-time for the medical center and part-time for Vermont Family Network.
Mhm.
But I do work more during the summer. I still have to hold the two jobs, but I just work. So I've been working like, 50, 60 hours over the summertime, but it's okay because I just love it. Um, and I finally feel like I've landed in my dream job. And
Mhm.
I think Lisa and the culinary medicine team just have laid an amazing foundation. And so it's been really fun to come in to this
Mhm.
setting where we spent a lot of time and I got actually to know a lot of people there at the hospital as well,
Mhm.
and being able to start helping the program to kind of build and
Mhm.
expand
Mhm.
and getting more of this therapeutic horticulture types of things into what's the culinary medicine program
Mhm.
at the
So why
hospital.
don't you share your screen and
Mm,
show
yeah,
our viewers as well
yes.
as
So
and the listeners can listen in if they're not watching.
right.
But I think it would be great for you to demonstrate or present the setting
Yes,
in which you get to do this horticultural
yes.
therapy.
So I've been able to, like I said, been very interesting to be in the nutrition department in
Mhm.
culinary medicine.
Mhm.
Um, because, if you think of word culinary, it's more, about cooking and, and skills like, I work with chef educators and registered dietitians. But I'm now bringing in this element of, uh, sort of that where does your food come from, right? And
Mhm.
that gardening aspect and the nature aspect. So I'll go through some slides and you'll kind of see kind of what I've been doing. But
Yeah.
just to start for some context. So this is my son and Ethan and my daughters with him in the outside in our yard. And then this is the beginning of our garden that we created for
It's a
him. And so it's got the
beautiful
whole thing
infinity
is like
garden.
it's all
Beautiful.
accessible paths. It has raised beds. It was sort of designed as a kind of demonstration garden for that.
Mhm.
Has like a shaded quiet area in the back, has an open sunny area in the front.
Really
Initially, I
pretty.
had planted the whole thing with like categories of plants, sensory plants, fragrance and texture. Um,
Here you got to
so
really apply your landscape architecture for your own
yes.
personal needs.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I grow lots of flowers. There, lots of dahlias. It's beautiful in all seasons. My dad's sculptures are there. He did a little marble sculpture at the end of his life. Um, and I also a lot of the flowers that we're growing, I arrange and I've been bringing into like spiritual care at the hospital, and they can, deliver them to patients who might need them. So it's just a little bit of what I was doing, in this garden. And again, it's all about sensory stuff with the
Mhm.
fish and the water and all that. Um, and I live, of course, in this beautiful state of Vermont,
Yeah.
which just has for us, I think nature is a lot more accessible than, people that live in a more urbanized area. So a lot of Vermont is rural. So I'm just lucky to be here in this lovely place.
Mm.
So culinary medicine is really we sort of our mission right now is to nourish health in the community through the experience of food, the science of nutrition, and the wonder of the natural world. So that's where I am come in, the wonder of the natural world piece.
Mm.
We like to meet people where they're at. We want to basically, we're providing experiential opportunities for people to do hands-on stuff, whether it's learning how to, you know, cooking skills or growing things or
Mhm.
all that. It's really about connecting to each other, connecting to the planet, connecting to your food, um,
Mhm.
and and then finding awe in those things too,
Mhm.
whether you're
And food
smelling
is
herbs.
medicine. Food is
Right.
medicine. It's not a separate antibiotic or
Yeah.
medication that you take or,
Yes.
a drop
Yes.
that you just put in your mouth every so often. It's what you ingest every
Right.
day.
Right. And I think we're trying to also like introduce things in a way that feels accessible. I mean,
Mhm.
accessibility is so important with these things.
Mhm.
So we really want to meet people where they're at
Mhm.
and gently, I think, introduce them to these things and hope that they'll take some of these things, and to help them with behavior change or, health change to ultimately feel better.
Is this the one in the big garden or on top of the roof?
So yeah, I'll get to that in a
Oh,
second.
okay.
So we have
Sorry.
some clinical, yeah, we have some clinical programs
I'm beating
like,
the gun
yeah,
here.
I know, where we're working with like certain clinics, where we're doing like, there's one for kids, which is called Kaleidoscope. There's a skills before pills. There's a cooking class,
I
through
like
the
that.
cooking class
Wow.
through comprehensive pain. And then, I'm actually going to do this summer. It had been run pre-COVID, but now I get to do it this summer. I'm doing a gardening for health class, which we're hoping, which will be on the rooftop garden, and I'll show you that in a minute. That will hopefully be with pediatric psychiatry with kids and
Love
their
it.
parents. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so we're hoping to do that there. We're
Love
also doing a bunch of community programs. So the big one that I run is called the Learning Garden Program, and that's,
it.
yeah, that's the one that's at one of the gardens, and I'll show you pictures of that. That is a 20-week from May to September class that meets once a week, and I co-teach it with a chef educator and a registered dietitian. So every week we're having a gardening lesson, we're cooking, we're eating, we're learning about nutritional value, and people get to garden, and they each get a 60 square foot bed, and we do square foot gardening there. And so it's amazing. And the best thing about it is this amazing little community that gets
Mm-hmm.
built from that.
Right.
We're doing right now, we're starting a food and mood group with a psychiatrist, and we're focusing on a particular food ingredient like turmeric, for example, and how that can
Mm-hmm.
improve your mental health. But then I also bring in a little bit more of the nature, sensory experience kind of stuff. And there's also, we do it with a chef educator who will do a whole lesson on, like, for example, turmeric. She does like a turmeric buttermilk dressing, and then we put it on
Mm.
salad and we eat the salad together. So it's great.
Turmeric is one of
I'm,
my favorite rhizomes, if you want to call it that.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
is
yeah,
so it's
yeah,
so warming, and it is anti-inflammatory,
yeah,
but it just makes everything richer in
yeah,
flavor too. It's just
yeah.
I love it.
It's the
Lemon
best.
ginger turmeric is my favorite tea. And
Mm,
you're drinking a turmeric chai right now,
I know,
so
I am. And so another couple, so I'm in the process, like I said, of developing programs. So I'm like, there's been a great foundation laid, and now I have this opportunity to sort of build programming, and it's been really interesting getting sort of this out there into the community. And I did some stuff on this at the rooftop garden recently where, bringing classes out there. And so anyway, I'm hoping to do what's called Harvest Health Academy. So I'm creating some connections with different programs at the hospital. So for example, spiritual care, we're going to talk about like planting the seeds of, hope, and that have like a session on that, or art from the heart, which is the local art. They give craft supplies to patients. And so maybe doing a plant propagating thing with them, and maybe doing something with my chef educator with like edible flowers and different things at the rooftop garden. I'm also going to do a windows with a view project with wellness, where
That's
we're going to
cool.
set up stations throughout the hospital at different windows where employees and patients and stuff can get to more quickly, and maybe have a moment where they look out a window and like either listen to a poem or a meditation or do a little prompt. So and I'm
Mhm.
also working on wayfinding, because there's a lot of very cool green spaces that are both on the UVM campus and the medical campus. So we're trying to create some walking paths. So I'm working on wayfinding, mapping stuff for that, which is cool because that's also part of the landscape architecture background as well.
Right. I have to say, you have many programs, and I don't mean to be challenging here, but I'm almost overwhelmed just by
Hmm.
hearing you about all these programs. So
Yeah.
how do you, I mean, you said you're kind
Gotta
of
be
the
juggling all
systems
right.
person. You like to establish the framework
Yeah.
of what it takes to do
Yeah.
all this. So who was actually executing these programs that you're talking?
Sure.
You're doing
With
it all, but are
I'm
you
doing it.
facilitating them as well? Like that's what I'm.
Well, I'm co-facilitating. So I
Yeah.
have the
But
support of the culinary medicine department. And like, for example, Food and Mood is a chef educator, registered dietitian, myself, and a psychiatrist. So
Mhm.
together we're kind of running these
Good.
classes. And these
Right.
are all new things. And it's almost like you have to pilot something and try it and see how
Yes.
it lands. and
Oh,
then
definitely.
decide whether you're going to keep it or not. So I'm in
Yeah.
that place where I'm a little bit overwhelming myself, overwhelming the program to like get these things out there,
Yeah.
and then we'll
And see what
see.
clicks maybe too.
Right, right,
Yeah. Hmm.
exactly. So just quickly, this is the Learning Garden, which is at one of our satellite campuses. And those on the right side or the left side are where the beds, those are the Learning Garden beds. I have a cutting garden there, a volunteer that does flower arrangements for the hospital. I have a pantry garden there, so I grow food for the local food shelf there as well. So I oversee and maintain these two gardens, this one and the rooftop garden. So I plant them, I water them, harvest from them, etc. every week.
Do
Um,
any other people get to participate in those gardens though?
well, yes, this is our learning gardeners. This is where the class happens, this once a
Oh,
week
okay.
class.
So
Yeah.
they too also help contribute to the tending of the garden, not
Yeah,
just.
I believe they
Yeah,
each have their own bed, right? They have
they
responsibility.
each have their own bed. Yep,
Okay.
those ones on, and they each are responsible for maintaining those gardens and maybe the area right around them. But then I take care of the rest. And I have a little
I
tiny
see.
community garden in the back of this garden as well.
Okay. Okay.
So these are some of the classes that we have had out there. So like here's like, learning how to can tomatoes, learning how to make pesto from any kind of herb or green. And we have like a little teaching space there as well.
Hmm.
And then we teach the square foot gardening method just because it's a kind of an easy entry level way to get into
Yeah.
gardening.
Yeah.
Um, and then we also have an indoor space in case it rains or it's whatever, inclement weather kind of thing. So here we're doing herbal sachets, Aaron.
Hmm.
That's something that Aaron shared with me. Um, and then on the right hand side is our first food and mood group. We did some like a
Love that.
scratch and sniff herbs thing to
Hmm.
start.
Hmm.
And then this is the rooftop garden. So this is at the main campus of the hospital. And
Hmm.
there are all these raised beds there. We have to work on accessibility a little bit because anyway, it needs to be paved.
Hmm.
There's gravel there that's just gotten kind of overgrown. And
Hmm.
that's also where my landscape, oh, yay.
It's really pretty up there. No, I really like
Yeah.
Top Garden.
Yeah. And then that's where the landscape architecture comes in handy too, because
Yeah.
I can talk to, facilities has been so great in supporting me in these gardens.
Hmm.
It's really a wonderful relationship to have that. I always say to people, as a landscape architect, if you're going to start a project, the first thing you have to think about is maintenance, right?
Exactly.
Because if you
Yep.
can't maintain it, it is not going to make it.
Right. It's going to
So
prove unsavory to others at that
yeah,
point. Yeah.
yeah. So on the right side is a group of it was some nursing students that came over. We also have the Larner College of Medicine and the College of Nursing and Health Sciences. So they were doing a class on compassionate care. So they were doing some sort of self-care
Hmm.
awareness. So I did a whole class with them, and here they're doing some nature journaling, and we did some mindful eating of microgreens, and everyone
So
got
is
to take
this
a
space
microgreen.
primarily serving students and staff, or are there other outside populations who get to use this space?
Anyone can use this space. It's completely open to the public, and it's open 24/7.
Hmm.
So the encounters that I have when I'm working up there with patients, staff, families, like the things they say to me and when I see them enter the garden space, how you can see a smile come or they just drop, even though they're like they have their IV pole or they're with their nurse and they're sharing like the smelling of herbs together. And yeah, Aaron.
I,
Are you raising your
I
hand or are you
did.
saying?
I didn't want to interrupt her flow, but I'm like, question, like
Yeah, yeah.
funny. You're like, Aaron, yes. Um, have you ever, since it's open to the public, right? Have you ever
Yes.
had like a bad experience? Like someone's come up there and like just got in the piss
Um,
mood and just was like ripping me.
Occasionally someone might be having a mental health
Right.
episode and I might need to just make a call and just
Hmm.
have someone check on them. So it's been okay, but this is where I'm going to have my gardening for health program. So the families will each get a little section of one of these beds to use. And anyway, and this is where, like I said, I'm going to do the Harvest Health Academy and hopefully have like drop-in sessions for people to come in, maybe once a month, that kind of thing. So it's an amazing space. I have lots of passive educational stuff too, like, signage around a pollinator garden on the right side. And I have sensory planters with like textured plants or herbs or just sort of to demonstrate to people things that they can do. I plant things sometimes in pretty patterns, like, zigzags of lettuce or, and so there's like on the left, that's like 1 week of harvest. So I harvest every
Right.
week and grow vegetables up there. And there's some perennials. And just
And who takes the
amazing.
harvest? Who do you give the harvest to?
So they're donated to, it's a local food shelf. And
Okay.
yeah. And then just and it's so fun to be up there too. And when people are up there, you almost start feeling like you're in a fairy tale. Like when you're quiet and you're just working in the garden, there's like suddenly birds landing near you or
Yeah.
butterflies close by, or so it's amazing.
Do you ever
Um,
feel like you need more support than what you have?
yeah. Mhm. And we're trying, I mean, ultimately, right? I would like to be working full time in this job. And
I know, I can't believe you're doing this part-time.
I know that will allow me to be able to really focus in and be able to do more programming and really start to bring stuff like even indoors in the wintertime and offer things year round, which would be
Right.
great.
Yep.
So that is what we're really hoping for. I think culinary medicine is starting to take off somewhat, and people are asking for this. So, making partnerships with the, employee wellness, both at UVM and the medical center, and I've made some contacts with the Honors College student employee wellness. So kind of, and also the Osher Center has been helpful in trying to get some more
And what
connect.
about the University of Vermont Cooperative Extension? Like they have the 4-H,
Yeah,
the nutritional programs for food
yes,
preservation?
we need to kind of figure that out a little bit more. There's a very interesting dynamic between the hospital and the university that I would love to see more collaboration happen. But I think everyone's doing great work, but they start to, sometimes you don't know what the other is doing. And so
Right.
I
Yeah. So
am
you have
looking
to
for
become
those,
that liaison for
right.
to-
And I'm seeing opportunities for that.
yeah.
So I'm hoping that will come to fruition as well.
Yeah.
And we are doing some curriculum work with, like, say, Lerner College of Medicine and how to speak to patients as a doctor about nutrition and that kind of thing. So, yeah, we
Well,
just had to.
oh, sorry. I have to say
Go
we're
on.
running short. So if
Yeah.
there's
Okay.
an
Yeah.
opportunity for our listeners or viewers to get in touch with you to ask you questions,
Yeah.
would you
Yeah.
be willing that Erin shares your email?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and some quick things. We had a very special recognition. Admiral Rachel Levine wanted to see our culinary medicine program and came this summer. So that
Oh,
was quite a
fantastic.
special treat. I'm the planetary health person, so I do that with families. I talk about all lenses. We do nature journaling, and these are just some examples of things we do, noticing nature and connecting, how you can connect in daily life. So yeah, so my contact information for sure.
I'm
Very interested to hear what other people are doing, especially as related to nutrition and horticultural therapy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
I mean, you
know
just
many people that are doing that connection. So if you are doing that connection, listeners, definitely reach out to myself or Rachel or Irene and let us know that you're doing that connection and form that.
well,
Yeah.
I would love to come visit you. So
Yeah, anytime. Yeah.
You can come up with me, but I have to come visit.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I gotta visit two more times. I gotta visit.
2 more times. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm all right. I'm there.
Forget Christian, forget David. We're gonna go on a road trip.
And thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I feel very honored.
Very happy to have you and so glad you made it. Good night, everyone.
Thank you both.